I think it has its own culture, drum circle culture. It's, and anybody that attends is part of the drum circle culture. I think it's a unique culture in its own right because it's all inclusive, really. And in fact, that's one of the beautiful things about a good drum circle is that people of all ages, all sizes, little kids, especially when little kids come, and especially they really make the magic happen in a drum circle. And so I call it drum circle culture.
We've been meeting since 2016, except for 2 years during the pandemic. We had to call it off because we were inside. And we get together once a month, and it's all based on intuitive play, which is just a matter of listening with intention to add the quality of your instrument to the group.
It is, it's all inclusive, and people in wheelchairs go and get something enjoyment out of it. And if you can go to a drum circle and enjoy yourself and just let loose and experience some camaraderie and expression and creativity in your hands and your ears, and sometimes vocal. People sometimes vocal at drum circles, singing and.
To my knowledge, when Baba Tunde came to the States to study medicine, which he did not complete, he came and he literally changed his major because of the condition of the people. He wanted to heal people, and he knew that in their culture in Africa, drumming was a source of healing. He scrapped his plans and he started teaching people to drum. He got with the universities, and as he was working, people such as Mickey Hart and Carlos Santana and Arthur Hall and many others, they listened to him and they heard him. And back in the 60s and 70s, the sound, even Nina Simone and a lot of the other artists, the sound was a little bit different because it was a little bit more Afrocentric. You would hear a lot of bells, like in Lowrider, in the song Lowrider, you hear, and that's your bell. And that evokes all different sorts of emotions and things inside of you. So that sound kind of took hold, and sure, it hit the mainstream. But to my knowledge, that was how the notion of drumming in a circle for any kind of spiritual benefit, that's where it started. Now, again, from my personal experience and my background, drum circles were held like at rainbow gatherings and movements like that where people, they call them hippies, where the hippies would gather in the woods and play. Well, I was a part of that movement long before I ever did any African drumming. And we drummed, and many of those guys actually drummed African style, and I learned a lot from them as well. I learned that I definitely had to have a drum. From that day until the day I die, I will have a drum by my side. I definitely will. I mean, and not everybody has to have one, but one of Baba Tunde's one thing that he had wished upon America was that every home in America contained this medical device that I will call a drum in many cases, but that every family had these instruments, and that also that every community had at least one place where people could go and perform this form of healing. Again, as I said, in the 70s and 80s, I could see it. I was a part of it in the 90s. I could see it happening. Now, again, it's still there, but the circles are different. Some circles may not have one African djembe in it. That's perfectly fine. All I was saying is that people understand the origins. They don't have to play it and pay homage to the African gods and Baba Tunde every time that they are, or pay a tax to pay. No, we're not like that. No, we share the spirit. We share the spirit of drumming. We share it with everybody to hear and to feel it and to encompass it and to be one with it.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more popular in the Tallahassee area, and in Florida in general, it's kind of exploding. Really, it's there's a lot of drum circles in Florida everywhere you go, and kind of get involved in a group of people. Like, for instance, Para Lounge is a big influence in Florida, influencer as far as drums go. Para Lounge is run by a guy named Clinton Tipton, and he's going to be starting that back up again. He closed it down for 2 years, and now it's going to be happening again in a place called Deer Haven Springs, somewhere near Orlando.
And I was invited by a man by the name of Ramin Yastanpana. Ramin is very well known, Maharaja Flamenco Trio for one, an amazing man. And he showed up, I knew him from Crystal Portal. He came into my office one day and he said, "Lydia, let's get sound healing going in Tallahassee." This was in probably 2015. I had just retired from the state, and I had opened a office outside of my home so that I could continue to kind of go to work, and he said, "Let's get it started. Let's come together and do some sound baths and sound journeys." And I said, "Okay." So I went to Crystal Portal one evening, and he was there. The owner of the Crystal Portal was there, Alexis and Teddy, and they were all there. And I played for them. I did a little sound journey with what instruments I had. And so Ramin and I started doing sound journeys together once a month at Crystal Portal. And these were the first ones that were in Tallahassee. Ramin and I brought that to Tallahassee. And of course, that was in 2016. We kind of got ourselves organized and we started doing that. And then more and more people started to, come in that vein through drum circles and different venues that had been going on in Tallahassee. Drum circles seem to have a much longer history than our sound journeys or sound baths, but many people were interested. As a result of a sound healer coming into Tallahassee to offer continuing education units for massage therapists, how to integrate sound in their practice. Her name is Rosemary Warburton, and she'd been a practicing sound therapist for many, many years. So she came to town and she inspired all of us to begin to do this together. I've got Ramin on one level, I've got Rosemary bringing in that knowledge and information and the enthusiasm built, and the next thing you know, we had our first sound circle, the Sacred Sound Circle of Tallahassee.
So those guys, Ramin, Paul, and Yazid actually worked together in different various groups, but they were instrumental parts of the Tallahassee drum circle, primarily at Railroad Square, from what I know. And I've drummed with them there, and we're talking back 10, then 20 years or even plus. There are other drummers who have drummed who are still in town. There's a guy, Greg Beck, Forkman. He drums there, but he also drummed with the Rainbow Gathering. And there's actually probably one still in the Apalachicola Forest right now. And I actually had a lot of experience drumming in drum circles at Rainbow Gatherings as well. I started off with him, and then there's a guy by the name of William Anderson. We call him Atma. Very tall guy. He comes down to the drum circle. So I drummed with him in that capacity, along with Fork. And us three, we went, at times, we go to a place called Paralounge. And I don't know if you've heard of Paralounge, but all of those people that we mentioned, they have some connection with Paralounge. Maybe not so much Will Anderson. He's from Wisconsin. He did come and do some Paralounges, but with Greg Beck and Paul Harvey, they were definitely at Paralounge. And Paralounge was more of a regional drum gathering that we would have 2 to 3 times a year. It started in, I don't know exactly what location it started at, but where I started with it was at the Spirit of Swanee at a music festival. So they had their Paralounge at the same time they were having the Spirit of Swanee Music Festival. And I heard the drums. After that, I had to go, got with my buddies. We went. I was drumming and drumming and drumming for months and months and years until sometimes my hands bled. And then one year I went to Paralounge and I met my buddy Pierre Green, and at the time I was living in Tampa, Florida. Then he introduced me to a group called Kaumba that met regularly in Tampa, and that was my introduction to African drumming. I had taken lessons with Yazid in Tallahassee years previous to that, but you really need a strong community. If you want to get into African drumming, you really need to have, some instruments, and you need to have great lead players to guide you. So in Tampa is where I started to deviate from the drum circle. So for me, drumming African was kind of like starting the Marines. I had to kind of relearn some things technique wise. So after drumming African, when I go back to the drum circles, I like to incorporate some of the African rhythms and some of the traditional rhythms, and some of the rhythms that we can use as, like, say, passport rhythms. It can keep people in time. Sometimes the drum circles around, we noticed that sometimes it was more of a cacophony. Sometimes that was because in the circle was broken. So there was no true cohesion because you really couldn't hear what was going on next to you or across from you. So you would play what was immediately next to you, which could be different from what was across from you. And sometimes people would be disturbed by that. And sometimes people would be playing in different time signatures. For instance, some people might be trying to play in 6/8 when the rhythm is in 4/4. A lot of times people at drum circles drum with mostly djembes, and they don't have the foundational instrument, which is the dun-dun. The dun-dun is the backbone. The djembe accompanies the dun-dun. A lot of times in drum circles, people do not understand those dynamics. So for me, I go and I drum, and if people are interested, they can come and learn more at the classes that I offer. But we try and we go and we blend in with the people, who are at these various local drum circles. But not too far in the past, we were going around the state of Florida, visiting the Paralounge drum circles in Ocala and different places, and other drum circles. There's actually a drum circle finder. But again, sometimes the drum circle, you don't know what you're going to find.
seems that someone becomes a caretaker and is the person that advertises or puts it out there that this is going on at this time on this day. There are other drum circles around fostered by people. One is, I'd love to tell you about Bennett Hoffman. Bennett is a djembe player. He also plays handpan, and he's about my age, and he's been doing this for a long time, and he has a group that meets out near Lake Ella. And I wanted to let you know that you can find out about various drum circles on Facebook called Drum Circles in Tallahassee. There is a page there. It's private, but you can join. Anyone can join and find it, if you know what I'm saying. It tries to give people an idea of where they can come together and play drums in Tallahassee. And Bennett is probably the inspiration for much of that. There's also the First Friday Drum Circle that happens. And I think William McNider might be the caretaker of that. He seems to have kind of picked it up and is bringing that forward. There's also some African drum groups. Robert Allen is one of those, and so is Yazid Johnson. Yeah, he's known by Yazid more than anything. He's got Afro-Cuban ensemble, but many of his rhythms are African as well. So those two have their own kind of, circles or teachings. I know Robert is teaching those beautiful rhythms. We have another offshoot. This started at Lake Ella. There was a small group of people. They met like Wednesday at 4:00 at Lake Ella at the gazebo. And they've been doing that for a long, long time. And Willis Rabin is one of those fellows. You might have met him. He plays Didge. And so I would drop in occasionally here and there. There'd be 5 or 6 people. And then we found that Lake Ella just was not the best place. It was just not working for a lot of people. Willis lives in Havana. So he offered the Lake Tallahassee Pavilion for us to come to. That's how that started, and that became and still is kind of a small private group because we want to keep it small. We want to be able to have a smaller group where we can grow ourselves. I see the Sound Circle and the Lake Tallahassee Vibe Tribe circles as opportunities for us to grow ourselves in this art of intuitive play and playing and learning how to combine different instruments that have never been combined before to play together. Of Tallahassee's development, the drum circle that meets out at Lake Jackson Mounds has been meeting out there for many, many years. It's come into several different formations with different intentions. And when our fearless leader, Marshall Sherman, passed away, that drum circle was kind of in a place of where do we go from here? So the people that were in that drum circle, we decided to instead of continue it as a drum circle, that we continue it as a sound circle, and we call it the Good Vibes Community Sound Circle. And that just gave permission, and it took us a little while to explore the art of intuitive play together. And that's why if you come, oftentimes you'll see that maybe one set is djembes and drums and you just give up. You rattle maybe, and the beautiful chimes or things that aren't appropriate. But I have found that my little tongue drum sounds quite beautiful with the drums. And it is, the drummers are, when I start to play, they immediately start to the volume goes down and they're listening to me, how I am complementing their rhythms, and they continue with their rhythms, but I can complement. And then other instruments can come in, flutes and rattles and all different kinds of things. So we are learning more and more from the people that come out to give them a choice between a traditional drum circle and a sound circle. Mm-hmm. And what expectations are carried with those different groups. Drum circles are a little bit different in that there's there's pretty much rhythms that are formed by the group, and those are played loudly to create the one sound, I guess you could say, and no judgment at all, just a matter of recognizing where you are. If you're in a drum circle, this is what's going on. If you're in a sound circle, there may be something a little different going on with the addition of instruments that are not customary to a drum circle. Violins, gongs, singing bowls, crystal bowls, chimes, bells, flutes. All of these instruments come into play. So our djembe players or drummers have to be sensitive to that. So what happens is we sort of inherited, I guess you could say we inherited that circle that you came to first Sunday of the month at the Mounds at 1 from Marshall Sherman when he passed away. That was a turning point for us to branch out and become more of a listening circle and bringing in different instruments. So that's why we are more of a sound circle, I'd say. Mm-hmm. There's plenty of drummers and we welcome everyone. For a while there we were kind of closed. We weren't sure what we were going to do, how we were going to handle things, but we've just this year opened it up to anyone. We don't, however, post on Facebook any pictures or announcements. It's word of mouth. This is a decision that we've all come to because we want to make sure that people understand that we aren't a drum circle. We don't carry the characteristics of a drum circle in a sound circle. It's a little different.
Go back to the drum circle versus a circle of drums. Circle of drums is how it started, and it was for that purpose, that healing purpose. Because when you have the drums, something different is happening. If you just have djembes and you just have your doon doons and you have your bells and maybe you have a shake-a-ray, something different is happening. Something different is happening. The rhythm is syncopated. The rhythm is, providing everybody's in time, something is happening. Back to the cultural aspect of it, those are the things that I would like to have in a drum circle that I was playing in. Of course, also, in a drum circle that I was playing, I would incorporate some of those traditional African rhythms, some of those polyrhythmic layered rhythms. There's nothing like it. If we listen closely to rap music, if we listen to dancehall reggae, if we listen to reggae, if you listen to blues, if you listen to rock and roll, if you listen carefully, you will hear that African influence. It is in the music. It is in all of the music. So you can't shake the cultural aspect of it. You don't have to call it African because after a while, some things have changed the way that it looks. It's no longer African. Snare drum is no longer an African drum. A Native American flute is not an African flute. However, those things do have their own specific cultural significance, I like to incorporate Native American flute along with the African drumming. Sometimes we might chant and play the flute and have the drums playing at the same time. But we do make space for all instruments. And when we think of African instruments, I just certainly hope that people aren't just thinking of drums when they're thinking of African instruments in a circle. We would have the doon doons, we could have the African kora, we could have African flutes, we could have the gongo goi bells. These bells, we call them go-go bells. They're different from the go-go bells, which are more the Latin bells, and you squeeze those, but those are welcome too. We would even have some congas or some bongos. We might even have the berimbau, which it made its way to Brazil, but it also originated in Africa. So honestly, any circle with African instruments works because Africa is the cradle of life and civilization, and most instruments made their way through Africa. So anything you're playing at a drum circle, there is a version of that in the African spectrum of instruments. So I love the African instruments because it evokes a lot of emotions, not just from me, but from others. But also, to me, it's it puts me in a state of trance because of the shamanic nature of African drumming. And as the myth goes, when you are drumming, when you're African, and this probably works for any type of drum that is made with elements of the earth. So our African drums are made from specific trees, and mine come from that particular region in Africa. And it's a very sacred tradition, because in Africa, when they prepare a log to become a djembe or dundun, they actually have a ceremony for it. They ask the spirits and the tree spirit if that tree can be taken. For the goat, they do a ritual for the goat. All of the goats, the hides that they use. So all of my materials, barring the rope, come from Africa for those reasons. In my mind, it's pure. Not to mention that it takes me back before the arrival of my people, from the African diaspora, who came to this area. So in this area, most of the black people that you see here many of them are descendants of slaves, or they come from slavery. Well, when we first came, one of the things they did, they separated us so we couldn't we couldn't communicate with each other. We couldn't speak the same languages. They also took our drums away. Drums were a method, and still are a method of communication. At the center of any type of drumming, the drum is meant to communicate.
Process of creativity is not, I don't know if it's there so much in African drumming. From what I got from Robert's presentation, is that African drumming, everybody has a role to play, and there's one person that's the creative drummer, it's the lead drummer. So yeah, I guess drum circle culture is not so much like that. It's bring any old instrument, create any old rhythm, and you haven't got any set formula you have to follow.
It's a little bit different. As we see, I'm taking it another step back, and we're going into the African drumming, and then we're separating the drum circle from that. They're two different things. However, it's really good when the two of them combine, When we come out, we play some rhythms that might have been practiced. It works out very good. People can get in and dance and learn something they didn't know before they came.
often said that the sound circle is a greenhouse to learn to grow yourself individually as well as in community. And I think that speaks to everything, your personal growth as well as the community, and how that speaks over time and how you grow yourself. And just like I said before, my own personal growth and becoming more of a channel and opening up and kind of getting my ego out of the way so that we have a collective consciousness that arises, this is where we are informed more in this realm than we are with this thinking mind and, oh, I want to sound good and this doesn't sound good. And that has been a true challenge for all of us, is to get beyond the judgment of, does this sound okay? And just be okay with whatever is, because all of that intuitive sound is fresh, it's unrehearsed, and it can't be repeated.
And one thing that I don't think quite goes well with drum circles is a lot of alcohol and drugs, personally. Because for me, I think that kind of takes away from, it's counterintuitive in the sense you want to heal, but yet you're using something that blocks that healing from occurring. I think that you're brewing up a whole different type of atmosphere when people are dancing because they're lifted because of the intoxication from a substance rather than the intoxicating sounds that they're hearing or the intoxication from the music. And I don't want them to be mixed up. People should not be mixed up about what's happening in their body, because at the end of the day, if your muscles are sore from drumming and dancing all night, the next day your body is benefiting from that pain, that soreness. However, if you're partying and you smoke cigarettes and drink a pint of whiskey and you dance around the fire until your hands started to bleed, no, don't hurt yourself when you drum.
Now, talk about community. We are coming into a communal space of intention that really lends to your personal growth as well as the growth in the community. We meet at Abundance Wellness Center, which is a wellness center, and many of the people that come are healers. So they are bringing that aspect into this type of community. All this energy that comes in from the community into Abundance Wellness, it just fosters our learning and growth in building community. So it goes out and waves, and then it comes back almost like a sonic imprint that goes out into the community. You have to move out of the physical realm and move into the energy behind that, behind coming together in community with a very common intention.
Drumming is a peaceful thing. People should be able to come, any group of people should be able to come together and peacefully drum anywhere you go. So it's like that, it's like a universal thing, Sure, every community has their own little flavor of the drum circle, but I think everybody should be welcome at every drum or sound circle.